Hi, having a great day. You're watching JOG Entertainment, and for this video, I'm gonna go over Avatar: The Way of the Water's opening weekend as well as what I think it's gonna make in general. Because we also got the Monday box office numbers, which I waited for, so that way I could kind of have a better prediction. And the second weekend drop, what I think is gonna go over that as well as the word of mouth. I'm just gonna go over the movie's box office in general, kind of give you an idea of how much it's gonna make. Is it really gonna get to like the top highest grossing movies of all time? I'm gonna give you all that info in this video. So yeah, let's get started. So Avatar: The Way of the Water opened domestically with $134 million, which is pretty strong. It's actually pretty strong, but it's not as strong as you might want for this movie, especially with the predictions that they made before this movie came out. The pre-release predictions were between 175 million to 195 million, and it did not even get close to that. It got 34 million, which is like a big difference. In fact, this is the same opening as the Batman had early this year actually, becoming the fifth highest opening a weekend of the pandemic era. So pretty weak actually. It's not actually super strong. The Batman isn't like the biggest hit. I think it's like a 700 and something million. So being on par with the Batman is kind of not that good, to be honest, domestically speaking. Especially when we just had Wakanda Forever, which opened so much bigger, and Multiverse of Madness, which opened so much bigger. This, of course, does mean that the movie did underperform on its opening weekend. However, there was still some pretty nice positives to get out of it. So yeah, let's get started. And this wasn't a huge flop. It wasn't like, oh, it just completely flopped. No, it's really gonna depend on how much it can hold, which I'm going over that in a little bit. But this opening weekend isn't the strongest, but it's also not the weakest. They still did a really nice amount of money that almost any other movie would love to have. So it's still pretty nice money. It's just not the best. Now let's be going over the positives, or what exactly this opening weekend was all broken down by. So most of the tickets for this movie were actually from 3D, with 62% of the movie tickets being from 3D, which is the first time that has ever happened in like years, like ever since I think the original Avatar, because 3D has typically been dead for a long time, and the fact that this movie kind of is bringing it back is pretty insane. And it definitely seems like people are listening to the fact that they have to see it in 3D, and also in IMAX, all type of stuff. They're really going to see this movie in premium, which is really helping the box office as well as the movie's experience and word of mouth. So that's really awesome. The fact that this movie was able to bring back 3D from the dead basically is pretty impressive, and like I said, 60% of that money came from 3D tickets. Really awesome. Now this is also the biggest James Cameron opening weekend, beating the original Avatar's opening weekend, which was at 77 million, meaning that it almost doubled the original's opening weekend, which is actually crazy. So you can see this movie is still way bigger than the original opening from the original movie. However, you might be asking, then how did the original get so big? Well, that's because the original just had incredible holds. Like, it literally only dropped 2% in the second weekend, and after that I think it dropped like 3%, and so on and so on. It never dropped a lot into like its fifth weekend, and that's why it made so much money. So this movie is really going to be dependent a lot on the holds. So exactly how did that movie get the holds? It's because it has amazing word of mouth and the 3D experience. So does this second movie have that? Well, let's start going over the word of mouth. So the word of mouth for this movie is from the Cinemascore side, the audiences gave it an A for Cinemascore, which is actually super strong. If you have an A in Cinemascore, that means people had an amazing experience and a blast. Of course, A plus is a little bit better, so it wasn't the best Cinemascore they could have gotten, but it's the second best, so it's still pretty awesome, and that means that the word of mouth for this is actually pretty strong. Now the Rotten Tomato critic score is not as strong. It stands at 77%, so it is certified fresh, but it's not like in the 80s or 90s where you usually want a movie that needs this much money to be. So it's interesting to see that. I wonder if that's gonna hurt a little bit. I'm not sure yet. It's like somewhere. I mean, it's still certified fresh, so people still are gonna be like, it's good, but some people might shut them out because it's not like at 100 or like at a 90 or like an 80. 80 I think is where you kind of want to be when you have a movie that's expensive. But the audience score for the Rotten Tomatoes thing is at 93%. So that's really strong. So when you press Rotten Tomatoes score, and you see 77% critic score, but then you see 93% audience score, you know what? I think this movie might be pretty good, because that's actually a pretty nice audience score. Meaning the word of mouth coming from people that have already seen the movie is actually really awesome. So that's great. This definitely sets it up to have a great word of mouth, and the 3D experience does seem to be something amazing, judging by the 62% of the money that came from the opening weekend coming from 3D. So maybe it does have what it takes to have those amazing holds. Am I 100% sure? I'm not exactly sure, but it looks like it. Why? Well, first of all, the only competition that it has this upcoming weekend is Babylon, which I don't think is going to make that much money. In fact, I think that it's probably going to flop, judging by the critic reviews and everything, and the fact that it's also 3 hours, just like this movie. I do think it's going to flop, but I'm going to tell you sure. And Puss in the Boots: The Last Wish, which I'm not sure if it's going to flop or not. I mean, the movie has amazing reviews, calling it the best animated movie of the year. So it might actually push forward a lot. And usually animated movies do really well during this time. Like last year, Sing 2 came out and it did really, really well despite No Way Home being in theaters at the same time. Sing 2 still did really awesome. So this could be really awesome counter programming for Puss in the Boots, kind of people that don't want to see Avatar. Let's go see Puss in the Boots: The Last Wish. That could be really nice, awesome counter programming. So we're gonna see exactly if that actually hurts the box office for this movie or not. We'll find out, especially as it's also another family movie, and some families might just rather watch Puss in the Boots: The Last Wish. So, and there's also the fact that it's shorter might also help. So we'll see, because this movie is 3 hours long. So that's also a thing to keep in mind. However, this competition isn't super hurtful. It's not something that I think is going to really, truly hurt the box office. Beyond that, the next weekend is going to have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the weekend, which is actually insane. And usually, Christmas Day, almost everything is closed. So if people want to go out, where do you think they're going to go out? To the movie theaters. And movie theaters have usually been pretty big for Christmas Day. But the fact that we have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the same weekend, which has never happened before, it might actually boost the box office really, really well. So just expect a really nice, I think, hold next weekend, because Christmas Day is on a Sunday. I think that the movie could actually do some pretty nice, serious business on Christmas Day, keeping its hold really strong. However, do I think this movie can drop 2% like the original film? No, I do not think that at all. In fact, this past Monday, that's why I waited to make this video into Tuesday. This past Monday, the movie made $16.2 million, which is exactly the same thing that the original film made. So that's really interesting. And the original film, like I said, only dropped 2%, and it earned $75 million for its second weekend. So if this movie earned $75 million for its second weekend, that could be really, really strong, because that would mean that the movie only dropped 45% to match that second weekend of the original film. Do I actually think it's only gonna drop 45%? No, that would actually be really insane. If it only dropped 45%, that would be an amazing signal. Would it be as amazing as dropping like 2%? No, but it would be an amazing signal to only drop 45%, because that's really rare in modern blockbuster Hollywood type of era. Like No Way Home dropped like 60% last year and so on, because these movies open so big they kind of had to drop a lot. However, like I said, Alice in the Way of Water didn't open the biggest, so it could be possible that it only drops a certain amount. My personal guess is that this movie is going to drop between 50 to 60%. I think it's not going to drop over 60%. I don't think it's going to drop that much, but I don't think it's going to drop that little where it's going to drop less than 50%. So we'll find out. I don't think that this is like the amazing legs that it needs. It is pretty good legs. If it only drops that much, it is pretty good legs, but not the amazing legs it needs to reach $2 billion, which I don't think this movie is going to do. More on that in a little bit. Now, what about the overseas side of the box office? Well, overseas, the movie opened to $300.5 million, which is really, really strong. It's actually extremely strong. I think only No Way Home had a bigger opening post-pandemic times. So that means that this movie is opening pretty big for overseas. However, one statement here is that the China box office was really weak for this movie, only earning $57.1 million, where the original made so much money. This one only opened very weakly there. So that really sucks. I think China's having like a COVID resurgence, so that might be a huge effect on it. But it really will hurt this movie's overall box office, which really sucks for this movie. Which once again proving that I don't think this movie's gonna make it to $2 billion. But the overseas definitely seems to be a lot stronger with this movie than the domestic box office, which is really interesting. Sometimes you have those movies in the box office where either you're stronger domestically or you're stronger overseas, and this is one of those movies where it's gonna be stronger overseas than domestically. Now, moving on to its total opening weekend, which means the domestic and the overseas box office, the movie had a total opening weekend of $434.5 million, which is really, really strong. Like, actually a pretty nice first opening weekend. However, not strong enough, in my personal opinion, to reach $2 billion. I'm going to go over that in a little bit. Now, why am I saying $2 billion? Well, that's because the budget for this movie is insane, becoming the highest, the most, biggest, most expensive movie of all time, beating Endgame, which is such a a thing to gamble on. Like, I don't know if I want to be more expensive than Endgame, but the budget for this movie is at 350 to 460 million. We don't really know. We have different sources saying certain stuff. I would probably go a little bit towards the higher side, just because you also have to consider also the commercial cost of advertising and all type of stuff, which usually doubles your budget. So I would probably go more towards the $460 million of budget, which is insane. That means it needs $2 billion to basically make a really nice profit, and it needs around $1.5 billion to basically break even, which is just insane, completely insane. Now, do I think it's going to reach that? Well, for my total box office office prediction, let's go over these certain things. The movie isn't playing in Russia, which in the original movie made $160 million there. So that's $160 million less that this movie is going to make. Also, like we mentioned, China box office is very weak right now, mostly because of COVID, and I don't think it's going to get any better. So you basically lost a lot of money from the China box office, where the original was super big in China, and in fact the original was the thing that made China like a big market for domestic movies. It seems like that might die with this movie, which is really interesting. So I do think this movie is definitely gonna make $1 billion, just because I think overseas this movie is really strong, and the word of mouth is really strong. And beyond that, like I mentioned, this movie basically has no competition into February 17th, whenever Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania comes out. So it has like 2 months to itself basically. You just have like Puss in the Boots: The Last Wish somewhere in there next weekend, and that's pretty much it. So there's really not a competition. So I do think it's gonna make it to $1 billion for sure, and it might even go all the way up to $1.5 billion if it holds really well. However, I don't think it's gonna make it to that point. And my guess is more towards 1.3 billion to 1.4 billion. Kind of like where Top Gun Maverick was, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but towards that exact same range, which I think would be really interesting. Because they both provide experiences that you can only get in theaters. They're both sequels to movies that are pretty old, and all that type of stuff. So they kind of have similar vibes, except for the fact that Top Gun Maverick was dominated the domestic box office, whereas I think Avatar 2 is going to dominate the overseas box office. But domestically, it definitely seems to be underperforming, which is really interesting. So I like that kind of contrast. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that's my guess, which this would still be pretty nice. Like only 1 or 2 movies have made it past $1 billion, which is Top Gun Maverick and Jurassic World Dominion. So the fact that this movie would cross $1 billion in general would just be super awesome. But we'll see if it's actually going to make it towards 1.5 billion and kind of break even. But I definitely don't think it's going to make it $2 billion. We'll have to find out more towards the second weekend drop, but I would not put my expectations that high. But yeah, that's my Avatar: The Way of Water open weekend box office breakdown, as well as just my total box office prediction and the reasons why I think it's going to be a certain point and do I think it's going to be profitable or not. So yeah, tell me think about it down in the comments. Do you think this movie is going to make $2 billion by any chance? Have you seen the movie? What do you think about it? Are you going to go see it again? I'm very curious. Or if you haven't seen it, are you planning on seeing it, or are you just going to wait to stream it? I'm very curious to know that down in the comments, as well as please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It will be very helpful. So please leave a like and subscribe for lower content, including a bunch more videos on After the Water, Puss in the Boots as well, and a bunch of other videos on just movies in general, especially since it's towards the end of the year. I'll be going over like top 10 movies, top 10 shows, all that stuff, so subscribe for all that content. And yeah, that'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day, and this is J Entertainment, out.